And welcome back. Thanks so much for tuning in to Morning Live. Again, today, of course, great emphasis on the Matric results, and the national Matric pass rate for the National Senior Certificate exam stands at 78.2%, and that's 3.1% improvement from 2017. Now, Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga announced those results yesterday evening, and she joins us now to further discuss these results. Minister, good to see you. Thanks for coming through.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Well, the obvious question is, are you happy?
I'm very encouraged. I really think we're getting there. We're not yet there. There's still lots of issues and challenges in the sector, but what is really gratifying is the fact that we're moving in the right direction. Just upward trend, which is very encouraging.
So let's talk about those challenges for a moment. So as per your assessment, which ones would you say are the most vital?
It's our throughput rate. When you get to grade 10, 11, you lose quite a number of children for different reasons. It's your social problems, your crime, teenage pregnancy. So we lose almost up to 30% of our children between grade 10 and 11. So it's a major problem as to how we deal with it. Some of the problems come from the fact that they find it difficult to cope with the challenges of the curriculum, but in the main is also your delinquency in terms of the joint gangs. So it's one of the major problems that we have to confront as a country, is to say how do we keep them longer in schools. The other issue is also just being able to provide a curriculum that has quite a number of options which can meet our economic challenges. We have more than 24,000 schools. We have less than 1,500 vocational and technical schools. They're very expensive, but it's a direction we have to move into. And there's still lots of wastages in the system where we get kids to repeat unnecessarily because we don't have the capacity sometimes to support them adequately. So there's still a number of challenges in the system that we have to get right and be able to really get a good retention rate, a good throughput, and continue to lift up the quality of passes.
The throughput rate is of great concern because I think it is a crisis when you are losing a quarter of your learners somewhere, somehow throughout the schooling system.
And suddenly, because up to grade 10, we find it almost 90% of retention. And suddenly when it gets to 10, 11, we lose just many of them. It's when they become teenagers, and the family structure becomes very important in terms of guiding them and supporting them. The environment also gets very important so that they're not recruited into gangs, drugs. So we lose them at a stage which is very critical in their lives. And it's where we need everybody to support them and make sure that we don't lose them at that rate, at that stage.
So are there any plans in the pipeline at this point, Minister, to make sure that there's greater retention of these learners?
No, quite a number of programs. As I say, we've introduced a 3-stream curriculum to make sure that a curriculum can be varied. They have more options. They're not all forced to go into an academic stream, and that's what we're rolling out. The progression policy, to make sure that we don't discourage them by retaining them too long in the phase. We're working with communities, with parents to support them when they start confronting issues of youth delinquency. And so there are lots of programs that we're working with civil society, but within our system to make sure that we give them lots of support, hence your progression policy, and giving them extra support to close the deficits when they encounter them, especially if they find it difficult to cope with the demands of the curriculum. So there are lots of programs we've put in place. We've strengthened our learner well-being program to look at all the challenges that confront them, which are psychosocial in most instances.
But of course, it's not all doom and gloom.
Exactly.
I remember the days when, the TIM study was, a very bleak issue to look at, and that's the trends in maths and science. And, we didn't fare very well, but incrementally you can see the progression that is being made. So that obviously has to be something that, you will be proud of as a minister.
Exactly. No, we are. And even the TIMS and the pills, I just sometimes feel quite disappointed at how we read them. Those are benchmark tests where not the whole, because everybody says we're at the bottom, as if 200 countries have got in. The last teams, it was 45. So we're number 45 out of 45, not out of 200. And it's only those countries that dare, that trust their systems, that get into those teams exercises. And I always compare to marathon, to say if you're not fit, you won't go in. But if you finish the race, it means you're ready to go forward.
I think we're much better now, Minister, than we were when we initially started competing in these particular exercises, because we were dismal. And I think there's no getting away from that.
No, it's not competing, participating. And the reason why I wanted to participate was to learn from the best systems, to say how are they getting it right. So we're not competing, we're there to participate, to benchmark ourselves and learn from very successful systems, to say what are the things that they do right that puts them there. So we weren't ready to benchmark ourselves, and we've learned a lot, and that's why we think we're improving, because those benchmark exercises have helped us.
So what are we getting right at the moment?
I think we're getting the system stable. There's a level within the system. I think there's high level of stability. Where we get instability, it's outside our schools, where communities keep kids from schools, they ban our schools. That's where we have lots of instability. But within the system, we're beginning to have coherence and lots of stability.
So, given the results, which province are you most proud of?
The Eastern Cape. I really used to feel sad about the Eastern Cape, because it had lots of potential. It has a very strong human base of a very educated populace, but they were not really stepping up to their potential. So I have a feeling that they're turning their corner, they're beginning to be serious and focused, and will systematically address the many outstanding problems that are still in the province. So I'm very encouraged by the Eastern Cape.
But the challenges remain, and there are many systemic challenges. And the question is, how are you going to address those? And your department is on record as saying time and time again that some of the problems, especially infrastructurally, for example, are sometimes outside of your competence as the Department of Education. However, these issues have a direct impact on the outcome at the end of the day.
No, completely. And lack of cooperation, we had lots of difficulties working with the Eastern Cape in the past. It is in the past few years where we found each other and were able to support each other. But in the past, they really were, it's our competence, it's our space, and you interfering. And it took us, I think it took us some time to find each other with the Eastern Cape as a government. So they still have lots of challenges that they have to confront. They have to really move on, especially infrastructure. And in the many unviable schools, they have more than 1,000 schools which are unviable, which should not exist, and which eats up their budget, because they have to really have principals that they don't need. You have a principal for 50 kids, you have a principal for 10 kids. And we've been saying to them, find a way of consolidating and only run viable schools. And I've been even struggling to get that right.
Yeah, Premier Maswale was here not so long ago, and he also lamented that. But obviously, this is something that you have to make work of in order to improve the system there.
Exactly.
But then you have the Eastern Cape, and they've moved off, the bottom of the rung there. But then
I'm sad about
Limpopo.
my province,
and I
Limpopo.
heard you yesterday. You seemed a lot more sympathetic towards the Northern Cape and their plight.
No, they had lots of problems.
But what's happening in Limpopo? Why did
Northern
they slack?
Cape had lots of problems. There were so many service delivery problems. At some stage with the MEC, we're just throwing our hands in the air. As late as December, when we were marking, there were lots of problems in Kimberley. Even our markers didn't have water at some stage. And Northern Cape was just a major problem last year. It's just that it's a far-off province and didn't catch much of the media, but it was a difficult province to work in for the MEC. And that's why I really had lots of sympathy for the MEC. Limpopo, I just think they have to get their act together. There are lots of things also which are
But what is wrong there, in the main, as per your assessment?
There are lots of things that they're negligent about. For instance, you go to Limpopo month and you find half of your teachers in town. So the main thing of in class, on time, on duty, those small things are still not being respected and honored in Limpopo. So they have improved. The MEC has increased his district so that he can increase his capacity to monitor and oversee, but I think they still need to have a stronger hand to really pull on just basics.
And then advocacy groups like Equal Education, and I think they are very valuable in making sure that, you know, they hold you and your department accountable. And one of the things that they've been lamenting is the adherence to the norms and standards. So going into 2019, what is your department gearing up to do?
No, we set it's ourselves who came with those norms and standards. They were not created for us and given to us. It's our norms and standards, and we're committed to them. And not only in terms of infrastructure, but as, for me, most important on the basics of getting the system work, to deal with the systemic problems of being in class, on time, on task. Getting the basics in class, for instance, to get your learner support material and get your foundation and your intermediate phase, because that's where our biggest problems are. In your primary schools, get those systems to work. So it's not only norms and standards in the infrastructure which continue to be a challenge, but there's a myriad of challenges that the sector faces that we have to confront in most provinces.
But these are not new problems. These are problems that you've been dealing with forever and a day. So where does the problem really stem from?
No, development is a journey. And that's why we're at 78.2. So we are on that journey. What we don't want to do is to deny, to say suddenly we're in 78 and pretend that we have been able to overcome all our difficulties. We've done quite a number of things right, and that's why we're moving in the right direction. But we're also acknowledging that we still have to continue to do more. So it's not as if we're not addressing these problems. We're raising them to the public to make sure that they understand where we are and they can partner with us and support us. It's not as if, and as I say, the results are a testimony that we are addressing the problems that are facing us, but we also don't want to pretend that they are over now that we think we're moving in the right direction.
So going back to one of those systemic problems that you yourself highlight of Limpopo, and I'm sure this is not peculiar to Limpopo, where you find teachers who ought to be in class and they are elsewhere and just derelict in their duty in many instances, not just being in class and that contact time, but in other duties as well. What is your relationship like with the unions at this stage?
It's actually very productive. We work very well with our unions. We have mutual respect. We differ where we don't agree. We engage where we don't find each other. And when we're able to find each other, we do. So we really have a very productive relationship. I wouldn't say they have a responsibility to support their constituencies. I have a responsibility to make the system work. But I can really safely say we have a productive working relationship with all unions.
And with regard to professional development for the teachers, what are you doing very actively at this stage in order to make sure that that happens progressively?
And that's where, when I speak about the productive relationship, we have the teacher collaboration, a collaboration with teacher unions, where with them, through their training agencies, we have a number of programs to support teachers. Provinces have got also their own programs. We have our own programs. We have very great partners like the NECT, for instance, where they crowd in support from NGOs outside, from private sector, to continue to support teachers and support the system. So we have a number of programs that are meant to support teachers and your support staff, like your in the past they used to call them inspectors, but we call them your district support staff or your subject advisors. So we have support from both outside. We work a lot with universities also, who give us lots of support in different areas. So it's a whole package that it's a partnership with different people.
And of course, the cycle continues, and it's now over to the class of 2019. Schools open next week. What's the department's preparedness for this? You touched earlier on learner support materials and the delivery of that. Is that still a big problem?
No, we really have improved a lot. Normally, in the last CEM, we sit together with MECs to check how far we are, where the challenges are. And from the last report in September, October, it was all systems go. Obviously, there will be problems after closing, cleaning of schools, vandalism. We expect that, things that will go missing. So teachers will have 2 days to really get ready for learners. So I'm confident that day one, on the 9th, we'll be teaching on the first day and in the first hour.
And of course, your message to the cohort of matriculants coming in now in 2019?
That their success is not going to be an event which starts around September. It starts on the 9th. They just have to work hard and be focused, be committed. And as I said yesterday, all our top learners tell me the same story. Commitment, hard work, focus, respect and humility helps them to go through. So that's what we're asking also from the class of 2019.
And I have to ask you, Minister, to address the issue of the 30%. Because we see a lot of this on the social media platforms when you speak to people, especially about success and congratulating the class that has just passed. People always bring up the issue of the low pass mark. So can you address that?
I don't know where it comes from. I know it came from Jonathan Johnson. But just to give you a context, this year, 172,000 learners passed with bachelors, which is more than, it's 15 above. 141,000 passed with a diploma, which is 14 above. And only 129 would have got their 4 subjects in 40 and the 2 subjects in 30. To say really it's when we have to talk about materially insignificant issues and fail to appreciate your materially significant. So the bachelors, which are 172,000, for me are materially important for us to talk. To talk about 129 learners, which constitute 0.0%, and then say it's a pass rate and make it a narrative, can only come from cynics. And I really don't. I think it's an unfortunate debate which mars the success and the hard work of teachers. It's neither here nor there. It's not an issue. An issue is that we've improved bachelors. More than 33% of our kids passed in bachelors. More than 26% passed in diplomas. Less than 0.03 passed with 440s, and some of their subjects were allowed to pass through at 33 and a third. And I always ask most of these learners to say, what did you get your matric? They say school living. I say we are one of them. So you have a productive life at a school living level. Don't worry about them. They'll have productive lives also. We're not killing them. So lots of people around are carrying a school living certificate, and they're living a productive life. They're not first class and second class passes. They are school leavers, and these are school leavers, and it's the same category. So let's not waste time talking about materially insignificant matters.
Minister, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you.
And thank you to Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga talking to us about the matric pass rate for 2018. And 78.2% is where that stands at. We're going to take a break, and of course we'll be crisscrossing the country as matriculants celebrate, and we'll also be looking at second chances for those who may not have made it, because we cannot lose sight of them as well. And of course the top performing province, Gauteng, MEC Panyaza Lesufi, will be here shortly.